the words Rick used when he was telling Daryl, Carl can't die. Carl can't die for nothing. Like Carl died for nothing. Those are the exact words that Negan used when he was choking on his own blood.
Right, right. Yeah.
Carl died for nothing, and boom. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I just love how those were the exact words.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah. So what do you think about let Carl go? Is
I don't
that
think it's like letting Carl grow. It's like let go of this like mission of like creating like an ideal world, like because Carl wanted that. The ideal world doesn't exist.
hmm.
This
Do you agree
it
with that?
doesn't.
Because part of me
Yeah.
I couldn't let it go. I just like I wouldn't be able to.
I mean, don't let go of the memory of your son, but don't try to build a monument to something that doesn't exist anymore.
Maybe it's like a Moses situation. Like if you think about it, like obviously we can move towards that goal, but maybe you're not the one that gets to do it. Maybe
I mean,
that.
you can try to move towards that goal, but I don't think that an ideal community where everybody gets along is feasible. It's not feasible without it being an apocalypse. Like, I mean,
Oh
how would it be
man.
possible during an apocalypse? Like, it's a stretch.
I
And
I think it's more feasible in the apocalypse. I mean, like-minded people, right? But
right, right.
like if you think about it with the rest, and it's kind of to Rick's point, it's kind of like when the rest of the world is, and this is true in wartime as well. Like, have you noticed that like when there's a war going on, like a real war, not like these fake wars that we're fighting, but like but like a world war, like everybody kind of drops their own mental health issues and whatever it is, and they rally and they do what they need to do. They don't think about their own problems, but like in peacetime, needs a therapist. Everybody's doing their thing to kind of find purpose. Now that
Hmm.
there's nothing, like no singular focus, people look at themselves and they look at their life's purpose and they realize they don't have one. And so
Hmm.
like my mom and I used to have these conversations, by the way, like when I was younger, because my
Hmm.
mom escaped from Syria when she was 20
Mm.
to America. She told me this whole thing. I didn't know the extent of how she escaped Syria until like the last 10 years. And like I've gotten bits and pieces along the way. Like she got smuggled by this one dude and they went to Lebanon and the thing dropped her off in the square and they took her to the synagogue in the middle of the night, and then they had to go to the airport and they had to hide in a meat truck, and then it's this whole thing. It's crazy.
Hmm.
They had to fly to France to fly back to Israel, and it's the whole thing. And the end of the story is like we talked about, like because the whole context of that is that she was trying to tell me like you guys you don't have purpose, and it's like when I was your age, I had to take care of my brother and sister and blah blah blah, and like and I use the argument, I'm like, well, you had to deal with what you had to deal with, and, like I don't because of you, thank you.
Hmm.
But like now we have our own problems, because in those times it's kind of like you have this thing that you need to do, and it kind of keeps you on the straight and narrow, and when you don't and you have all the freedom in the world, you have choices now, and now you can look at yourself, now you have self-reflection.
Hmm.
So the whole thing is kind of like, to kind of compare it to the show, it's kind of like, when you start to realize who the real enemy is, like, food, lack of food, the environment, walkers, natural disasters, lack of resources, stuff like that. Those are your enemies. And so
Hmm.
that should be enough to kind of keep people together. But then, it's kind of like it's not enough. And then we start hanging Gregories and,
Yeah, yeah,
and
pretty
getting
much.
drunk and hitting and knocking babies out of strollers.
Yeah,
So
it gets ugly.
it gets ugly out there.